Hey, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here for the live stream. So please feel free to ask me any questions you have in the or write in the thing that's there, the little comments or whatever. I'm just going to take some time to see what I have on like my agenda in terms of what questions I've gotten on Wattpad or the little thing that I sent you, the I don't know what it's called. It's like a little kind of survey about questions you have about the series. Um, I'm in school, like one of like the study rooms, so that's why there's half on the board for some reason. So yeah, let me know what questions you have now, but I'm just going to go ahead and then talk a little bit about the series and the ending and all those fun stuff, all those fun things. Okay, let me real quick go check on the little survey. So I'm going to do that right now. Of note, I do plan for this stream to just be like about maybe like an hour or so. So yeah, from 10 to 11. So just go ahead and let me know if you have any questions, and I will reply to them. Okay. All right. What's it called? Mm-mm-mm. Okay, so some of the questions I got were about like the so basically that surveys that I sent was about my Gmail won't open up. Let me go my Gmail online. Mm-mm-mm. Mm, I just forgot what the thing was called. What the website for the survey was called. So just give me one moment. Mm-mm-mm. Typeform. That's what it's called. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the Typeform survey, and we'll talk a little bit about what you guys asked me to go over for this live stream. Log in. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, so the questions that I asked for this, for the type form, had to do with like if you like the ending or if you didn't like the ending, as well as if there was anything in general that you want to talk about. So, in general, it seems like a lot of you didn't have a problem so much with the ending itself. Like you felt it was like, you know, okay, but just that you maybe wanted a little bit of a sense of closure in terms of like what exactly does Gino end up doing, what exactly does Marin end up doing. So in that regards, I just want to say that the reason why I did leave it open ended was because I didn't know if I wanted to do anything else with the series. So there's that question of like, okay, well, if I, you know, make everything like close ended, if I say that, oh, he leaves and, you know, they break up and then, you know, he goes on and lives his life, you know, trying to find a purpose outside of like playing violin or whatever, or she joins the band and becomes a rock star or something, then, you know, if I were to like, that kind of makes it seem like, okay, well, we that's more definitive. So then if I were to come back and say, oh well, let me do another series, let me do another like book where we go like 5 years in the future or something, then I can't really, I sort of have written myself into a box. And so that prevents me from essentially, doing some of the things that maybe I might have in mind later. So that was why I really tried to leave it in a sense where it's like there's enough closure, but also there's like still a sense of, well, we can work with this. Should anything be done? And so at this moment in time, my plan is to, I know you're like, oh, is there gonna be an epilogue? Is there gonna be another series? Um, I'm not gonna do an epilogue, but I am planning tentatively, no like no promises or whatever to do like at least like one like final book, kind of like a spin-off of sorts. Like I don't know if you watched The Fosters, and how like they'd have their like spin-off called Good Trouble. So something along the lines of that, where we go into the future, about like 5 years, and still have like Mirren and Gino as like the main characters, kind of seeing like what happened within the span of those 5 years as well as what's going on. And this wouldn't be like a whole 3 book super long series. It would just be like maybe like one book or like a novella, like a very kind of compact, like 5 years later, what's some stuff they do, what's some stuff that what are the things that happened, like flashbacks that happened, some big moments that happened in the past 5 years, and then like what might happen in the future. So it might be different in the sense that the Class Reject series, even though it was 3 books, really only occurred in the span of like a school year. So it really is like about a year. The book series takes place in roughly a year, 9 months. So this would be kind of more of a series not series, like a book that would potentially just be like, that could potentially, start off 5 years in the future. So like when they're like in their early to mid 20s or whatever, and then then have maybe some time skips within the book as well. So that might be interesting. But of course, that also raises the question of whether it would still be like, um, if it's still like a young adult book, or would it be, what's the genre now? Obviously, it's still like a contemporary, book with normal people doing normal things. It's not, there's no dragons, there's no like sci-fi or whatever. But would this potentially have to be like, you know, from young adults, like adolescent fiction, to technically like adult fiction? Not necessarily anything inappropriate, but obviously it's sort of that like idea of, how real do you want it to be? How realistic do you want some elements to be? If I still am writing it for uh, like a teen audience versus like a universal audience that could also include adult or have some more adult themes. So that begs the question of, would it be right for a platform like Wattpad, of which I don't know. Part of me also wonders like, okay, if I do a spinoff, a loose spinoff that technically still has like the main characters, would it be best to just kind of, keep it like its own entity, maybe just write it to then be like its own thing, so not have it on Wattpad, maybe try to pursue more so traditional publishing with the spinoff, which could be possible depending on how it's written. So I don't know, it just depends. So obviously, if you have ideas or questions about that, I'd love to hear your thoughts and get your opinions about it. So that's just the big thing that I wanted to talk about with that. I don't know, are you able to hear me? Let me know if you can hear me well with this. Okay, I think you can hear me. Okay, so does anyone have any questions, concerns, thoughts? I might do this shorter. It seems like there's not that many people watching, but as usual, I'm very thankful that for those of you that did stick around to not watch, to read the series, and I'm really available for any like questions or thoughts or concerns that you have about it. I'm gonna go through like my list of things that maybe you might want to get a sense of. So, okay, so one question that I did get was from Camilla Rose, who asked, will Mirren show her real identity? And so, my impression with that is that I kind of feel like, and with the potential of there being like a spin-off, like novel or whatever, is that it's kind of like that, like with Penelope's death and with all these things happening, there's not really an incentive to come clean about, her identity, if that makes sense. So it's like she could come clean, but again, that risks like what like the headmaster might do, what everyone around her might do. It kind of draws attention to her. That doesn't really help the situation, especially since, like I said, Penelope is dead. So it's like, well, what does that accomplish at this point? Like, she had the opportunity before that maybe if she had come clean, like within the first or the second book, where that might have done something, might have changed the like whatever, changed the path of the novel series. But now it's just kind of like her punishment, or the ultimate like thing for her to do is to just kind of move forward as a new person. And in a sense, it is like cathartic in the sense that, her identity as, you know, um, Mirren to the public was kind of in shambles. So it's kind of like, well, now that she has the opportunity to be whoever she wants to be, whether it's the, as a singer in, Axel's band, or if it's through even leaving that identity and just finding a new one in total, which is something that would also be explored in the spinoff. So that's what I would plan, was maybe for her to just be like a new person, whether it's tied to Sarah or someone else or whatever. I do think that um, long story short, no, she's not going to show her identity. She's not going to show her real identity. It's just for the people who know. So obviously, like Gino, Wallace, Chara, and like those people. Like those people will know, and Gino's mom. Like they know who she is, but there's not really much incentive at this point for her to go forward or for her to come clean, so to speak. Does that make sense? I'm gonna check for any comments real quick. I'm gonna check if there are any comments real quick. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, hold on. I have a new one. All right. New one. Okay, why did I kill Penelope? Okay, so I didn't kill her. So I think really, I don't know where I came up with that idea. Because I think part of the beauty of the third book, even though it's like super like long or whatever, it's just that there was a lot of time to kind of think about how I wanted the story to go. So the idea of her dying seemed to parallel like basically, the fact that, you know, that Mirren, that she dies, she dies to the public or whatever. So it was kind of like this interesting like parallel or irony that like, okay, well, Mirren's dead, and then everyone around her sort of reacts to that, for better or for worse, and then ultimately now the person who caused her to die dies. And so, but it's a real, like, she really dies. So it's like, well, how do you reconcile that? And that's also something that, again, in the spin-off, whatever, that would be something that would be explored. So yeah. So what else am I gonna say? Any questions? So that's why I just got that idea. Like, I'm always trying to make a spin of something. It's just the idea of like, okay, well, so Also, because when they have the accident, you automatically assume based off of like the earlier chapters that Chara is obviously the one who is the most injured, most likely to die or whatever, and then she doesn't. So that's kind of like part of the reason why initially I was like, I don't love the idea of like character death unless it's done purposefully. Like I feel like sometimes in novels we use character death as like this like tool to like evoke like emotion or whatever, but sometimes it's like you just do it for shock value or whatever. And this is kind of like a death where it's kind of interesting because it's like, even as a reader, I know like your favorite character isn't Penelope, but obviously you do get that, that sense of like, damn, like she like did she deserve that after everything or whatever. So it's kind of like that again, that bittersweet, that moral um grayness that the novel series um that was like the goal of the series. It's just that you have these characters, you have these characters, the main characters. You have Mirren, you have Gino, you have Wallace, you have Chara. These characters that start off, and you're like, well, they're the main characters. They have to be, good. They have to be likable. And I think for the most part, they do end up still maintaining their likability, but you kind of see how their morality gets compromised, how they do these things that are kind of fucked up or whatever. So I think when Penelope dies, it's kind of like this final straw where it's like, oh, technically, they didn't kill her or whatever. It's just completely an accident, car accident or whatever. But events that they kind of, their scheming, their role essentially kind of led to happening. So, okay, yeah, Penelope did this and that. She was a bitch to Mirren or whatever. But what was the ultimate like price? What was the ultimate cost when as it is exposed, as the incident is as the incident I can't talk today, as the incident is exposed, you kind of see, okay, well, yeah, maybe Mirren didn't deserve all the shitty treatment that she got from Penelope, but she did, like, it wasn't, she's not as innocent in the whole scheme of things. She, really hurt Penelope, which caused Penelope to kind of spiral and do that to her. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, I think, interesting in that sense, with everything happening. So yeah, I know that's a long story short. Like, killed her. Like, it was just kind of a thought. The same thing with like Juno, like his biological reveal, which I'll talk about in the next question that I have. But is, yeah, it's just kind of was a very interesting parallel that kind of just came to me because I had the luxury of time to work on this last novel. I think it took like 2 years to write the whole thing or whatever. So yeah. So going into that, another question is, how was I initially going to end the series? Um, like, was this ending that how it ended? Was that my initial plan? And I think, as I said earlier, I kind of made it this way because, in terms of being kind of a little bit more open ended, because I didn't know if there was any chance that I might do like a spin off or something or an epilogue. So that's why I kind of left it somewhat up for interpretation, so to speak. I didn't want to just like close the door, if that made sense. But in terms of actual like beat by beat um, events, um, yes and no. So initially, I know this comes to the ending. I wanted like Olive to be like Mirren's like long lost sister or something, like some kind of bullshit where she's like undercover, and that's why she was so interested in the case of her. And then turns out that like she kind of brings her closer to like her father's side of the family because like she'd be like her half sister through like her father or something. So that's the thing, some kind of like fuckery that just something like that. But then I was like, no, like I think the ending was very much me saying, okay, well, I'm not going to just do the first cliche thing that comes to mind. Like, for example, like having a reveal. I know everyone was like, oh, why, like, why isn't she revealed? We want this big reveal, but it's like, okay, well, that's what you expect. And then the day, it's like, what do we get from a reveal like that? What is her motivation in doing that? At the end of the day, there is a sense of escapism in um, her new identity, whether it's as Miles or as Sarah or whatever. I think at the root of it, psychologically, she doesn't necessarily want to. Not that she like hates herself or anything, but she doesn't really want to be herself. Hence why when she is at Rinzin, hence why when is at Sarah, she does feel, there's this dissociative sort of aspect of like, wow, my life's much better when I'm not me per se. So there is that sense of, I think, even though she says Gino is kind of the reason why she didn't, initially come forward after the fire or whatever, there is that part of her that's like, oh, well, I feel better not being me, or, so I'm rambling. Okay, hold on. I see I have someone who said something. Looks like on the chatty chat from Monkeys saying that I wish Chara and Mirren were still communicating as friends toward the end. So are you saying that you would have liked them, like maybe like a scene or something at the end with them talking, like since Chara essentially like wakes up, would you have liked to see like maybe a scene at the end where she visits Chara, like maybe like right before the book ends with like Gino and him traveling? Because I do think one thing about them is that the relationship is kind of interesting towards the end of the series. They kind of just stop being friends and they don't really reconcile, which is kind of, from a reader standpoint, kind of unfortunate, because if when you read the very first book, they're like chums. Chara's the one who like kind of like provokes the idea of her leaving or transferring, and it's kind of like, to see how it starts to how they end is kind of, I could see that maybe wanting to have some communication, even if there was. Yeah, exactly. Like you said, Chara was the one that came up with attending Rinzin, So, also, can you hear me well? I know I'm kind of like whispering. If you can reply to the thing. Yeah, so she started the thing. So I do feel like that. So maybe that's something that could be explored more in like the spin-off, which has a title, but I'm not going to say what it is just yet. So I do think that that's something that maybe looking back, I think I towards the end I was like trying to like, let me end it, let me tie up all the loose ends, but it could be. I do think from a reader standpoint, I know it's frustrating, but I think it's kind of interesting to see. Okay, in 5 years, what would their relationship look like? Like, how is Chara even? Does she have any deficits? What is she doing? How is their relationship? Are they friends again? Are they mortal enemies? I probably, though, being honest, I would stray away from them being like super mad at each other or something. Like if should I do like a 5 years, 6 years in the future kind of thing. But I don't know if they'd be like chums again. I think it'd be a very like associated, like if let's say there's a reunion, that's a great idea. Like a reunion like thing that happens, then maybe they'd just be like, pass like someone you just pass by. Not you don't hate, just like a neutral, like I'm not gonna talk to you kind of deal. So that's kind of a cool idea. That might also yeah, that's a good idea. I think there's like a reunion or something in the future. Okay, so reading your comments, and I think all of you can see this as well. So you're saying you wish their communication would have been closer when she was bullied. Yeah, I think they could have had more communication, but I think it's just sort of that sense of like drifting apart, and like Chara kind of, unfortunately, when she towards like the second, third book, Mirren gets closer to Gino and gets closer to Wallace, and because she goes to school with them, so it's just kind of like that natural like divide that happens, when you're not in the same school, you're not in the same space with someone. So I do feel like they could have gotten closer. But then I think, honestly, I think what it is when Penelope almost commits suicide, and like, in the third book after the like documentary thing, I think it really just hits Chara that, that this isn't a game, and that even though, yeah, no one's like super innocent in it or whatever, there's some real, like, it's a really shitty situation. And so and right now it's a shitty situation, and then Penelope is the one who's sort of is taking the hit, so to speak, So she kind of is like, well, I'm going to side with this person. I'm going to look at after this person because they've shown that they might do something dangerous again. And the fact that I think maybe Chara could have been transparent in that situation and maybe told Mirren that, look, Penelope tried to kill herself or tried to do something, tried to hurt herself. This has gone on too long. We need to just kind of all come together and just whatever. I don't know. That's a good point. Any other points or any questions before I move on to some of the reader stuff? Okay. So why'd I kill Penelope? Answer that. Will Mirren and Gino get together? So again, that's kind of like if we do like the 5 years. So basically, for the plan for the spin-off one story thing would just be like I don't know, like how I have it in my head. And again, this is all tentative. I don't want to say too much, but I also don't want to like leave you hanging because I know I left the ending open-ended. The way I see it is like, okay, in 5 years, there's a particular situation that joins Mirren and Gino, whether I feel like it'd be like another like academic setting of sorts, like going to the same school or something, like professional school maybe. And then they have to deal with like those kind of that being together and having to kind of see like, okay, well, what we, left, how did we leave what terms did we leave on, in between like the end of this book and then like the start of the spinoff or whatever. So would it be like, okay, they either reconcile to an extent, but they just broke up? And again, I think I alluded to one of the questions that like, I see it as that if they were to break up or something, or they're not together, it's more so because they're just in weird spaces in their lives, if that makes sense, as opposed to them just not like, liking or being in love with each other, if that makes sense. So it's just that with Gino and finding out who is, his family situation, he's just like kind of in a weird space between Mirren, I know everyone's like, well, what did she do? Did she go with Axel? Did she go, did she go to the band? Did she go back to school or whatever? Did she take Ben's offer? I feel, and again, totally up for change. I feel like she probably would have just gone with Axel's band and been like, hey, look, this is a new start. This is a new chance to kind of do something interesting. Just because between, just everything that's happened at Rinzen and at St. Rosamond, like, it's not really the ideal situation to be in, like, if you don't have to be there. And with Ben, obviously, yeah, that's another great opportunity, but it's just the reality is that their family, had this loss with Penelope dying. So it's like, how can you like take his offer to, be this scholarship, take the scholarship opportunity, whatever, when you're indirectly responsible for Penelope's death in a sense. So it's like, it just seems like the best break, the clearest break, if that makes sense. So, yeah. So, but anyways, I see another comment from Monkey saying, okay, so Walt distanced himself and stopped talking to Mirren because he needed space from what? I missed him. He was the brains behind it all. So I think why he leaves initially, I think it's because, like I said before, Wallace is very smart or whatever. He's kind of just at Rinzen because he knows high school only happens once. He knows that would you get out into the real world, that's kind of it. So there's no real rush, so to speak, and he's already like skipped like a couple of grades. So he's just like at Rinzen, learning, helping the school, doing his thing or whatever. So when I think at the end of the second book, Penelope finds out that Chara's played like a role in like all these schemes or whatever. So she initially like kind of blackmails Chara, kind of forces her to break up with Wallace for reasons that are explained better that I don't entirely remember why now, but I have listed at the end of the second book or the beginning of the third book. And so, one of the other reasons why he stayed at Rinzen was, because his girlfriend is, Chara's at St. Rosamond or whatever. So he has like a nice system at play. So when she breaks up with him, I think he gets the opportunity to go to Yale. He's kind of like, well, obviously he can still help them, but he doesn't have to be there. He doesn't have to be hurt. So why not just go? and live his life, so to speak. But he is the brains, and he is the everything kind of, he's the reason why everything kind of works out. But I also kind of felt like I have this thing where I don't love it when characters are just forced, when you just give them something to do so that way they're there, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if you ever watched like this anime called what is it called, Hunter x Hunter or whatever, Hunter x Hunter. And so they'll do like these arcs where like there's like 4 core main characters, but like in some of the arcs, 2 of the characters may not even be in like this 30 episode arc or however many arcs, just because they're not necessary in that sense. So I felt like with some of the stuff that was happening with Olive and with Gino and Mirren's drama, and with like Penelope and whatnot, I kind of felt that he didn't really have much to do. So it was kind of better just to let him leave, and that kind of helped at the end of the novel when he does come back with the whole taking the whole, not taking the blame, but then saying that he was the one who was attacked at the woods or whatever. It makes more sense if that makes sense. Like, I don't want, because there's so many characters or whatever, there's like, you have to be very deliberate with, are you just having him in the scene to be in the scene to say stuff or whatever, or are you making sure you're utilizing him properly? And I think even though he's not as present, when he is present, for that reason it's more meaningful. Does that make sense? But I know, because that's like the next question that I actually have. It's like, who's my favorite character in the series? And it's like, well, honestly, my favorite character is like, I think the best. Well, I don't know if he's, yeah. It's like, it's him. Wallace is like the best character. He's like the most well-rounded character. He's very nuanced, very smart, very like well written in the sense that it's like he's not generic. He has his point of view. He's very himself, which is kind of interesting in terms of writing him, because I feel like sometimes the problem, when you have a lot of characters or whatever, is that they kind of blur together, and if you're not paying attention, you're like, well, who said this? This sounds like something that they would say or he would say. So I do like Wallace in that respect, that he's just a very like, he's smart, but he's not like an asshole. He's very like caring. He's very perceptive, but he knows that he has limitations. He knows he's not perfect, and he's very honest, and he cares about his friends, cares about his family. And yeah, he's kind of like the person that we like all want to be, but he's not like, he doesn't take that lightly, if that makes sense. He doesn't take it as like, oh, I'm just super smart, genius, blah, 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 I can do whatever I want. He's very like, I don't know, he's just a great character. Okay, so I'm seeing more comments. I'm gonna reply to this. Okay, so so another comment was saying that that there's gonna be a big reveal, which I talked about a little bit earlier. That why I didn't do the big reveal, just because it seemed like the big reveal is just sort of like a thing that is like not a cliche, but just like something that you expect with like a character who's like undercover, is that there's going to be some big reveal and blah blah blah. But I think, like you said, like the character started changing, so in that respect, there was just not really much of an incentive to come clean. Like, there is like a couple opportunities within the first book or the second book or the third book where it was like, yeah, come clean. Like, I think the first book, once the fire thing happened and then her locket was found, yeah, maybe come clean, but she didn't come clean. Second book, towards the end, when like she wanted to come clean, especially since they got proof that Theodora was responsible for the Rising Star Award incident, but they didn't. And then at the third book, again, when they're at the huge, when like Dr. Edsel and like the school board were trying to, get a scapegoat for who was responsible for like all the little like things that were happening, she wanted to come clean and she didn't. So those are kind of like 3, at least 4 opportunities that I can think of where that would have been like, okay, come clean, because that's going to prevent this and this from happening. That's going to help prevent this person from getting in trouble. Or it's going to, not enough damage has been done. So obviously you can come back and you can probably, it doesn't reflect poorly on you for coming. It's more so like everyone else who made you do that, if that made sense. So that was why I decided against it. And instead, it's more so like, since they don't come clean, because they don't, come forward with their truth, this really bad thing happens, and then it's like, well, now you're kind of stuck. And so that's kind of that something that would be explored more in like the spin-off, which again would just be like one, probably about like the size of one book, um, like not as big as the third book, but maybe between the length of like something, but like probably about the length of the second book, or maybe a little bit longer. Something that I would like uh, consider doing, just that idea of like, okay, well, you didn't come clean. Now you have to kind of be this new, you have to have this like new identity or whatever. So it's kind of like, well, how do we see that? Will there be any opportunities where she does get exposed or she does come clean? Because maybe, like I know Miss Cowdery says that she doesn't want to come forward. She doesn't want to like release the book that she's working on about her story, but maybe she does go ahead with it or something, and then it does all come clean, if that makes sense. So I won't say never, but that was why I went against it. Okay, so okay, now I see he's talking about Ben. Ben Suka. Yes, Ben was kind of an interesting character because I didn't know initially how to go about it. Like I kind of was initially like, oh well, do I make it more or like do I make it seem more like, oh, they were like actually in a relationship, like he and Mirren or something kind of more like inappropriate or something. And so I kind of kept it, um, but I ended up liking how it worked out. I think what happened more so like with the incident, which now, is that it seemed more so that like his family helped her, maybe spotted her at like some like scholastic event, was like, oh my gosh, she's smart, she's could be a genius or whatever. Let's, she doesn't come from a good home, single parent home, whatever. Let's take her under our wing. Let's make sure she doesn't fall through the cracks, whether it's through some kind of like initiative for inner city kids or something, whatever. And then her probably getting like a crush on him, her kissing him at a party, and then obviously him not liking it, being like, oh, well, this is inappropriate, da da da. But then Gemma kind of witnessing it like in the background. Gemma then goes to tell Penelope, like, oh, look, she did this or whatever. Maybe they're in some, relationship, something very inappropriate. And then, obviously Penelope gets pissed. And then on top of that, uh, you know, Mirren has to deal with the embarrassment of, doing that, and then of kissing Ben, and then him protecting her, being like, no, this is very inappropriate, we can't do this, like, whatever. And then she kind of pretends instead that she liked Parker or whatever, but obviously Penelope knows the truth, and she knows she's lying. She knows that, on top of the hurt of like, oh well, her family essentially likes Mirren the most, likes her more than, like, her family likes Mirren more than they like her, essentially. So there's just like a lot of hurt there and whatnot. So I do think I liked how Ben essentially is just like this guy who's like, no, I gave you a chance. You're kind of like my people. I was hurt when I realized that when I thought you were dead, but when I saw you, at the dinner or whatever with Wallace and their parents, he's like, yeah, I definitely know it's you or whatever, because he's receptive, genius or whatever. So then he's like, look, I'm not going to, I'm pissed, I'm an adult. This is inappropriate. I can completely, call off this bullshit, whatever. But, I'm going to let you decide. I'm going to give you options. I'm going to be there. Just promise me that you'll, be available and do the right thing for yourself. But, just don't let, but in the end of the day, he's there and available to help, which I thought was kind of cool. And I like that little nuance at the end. And I also like at the end that there is that moment of honesty with that, which is cool. So he was cool. And again, he would be in the spinoff as well. I have planned for him to have a role in the spinoff. So we'll see. Yeah, my only biggest thing with the spinoff is just that I'm just kind of wondering what platform it would be on. Like, I don't know if it would be on Wattpad, just because I know you can do like a mature rating or whatever for the stories, but I just don't like, I feel like since it's such like a generalized platform, when you put like the mature rating or whatever, it just kind of makes it seem more sleazy, but it would be a more mature story with more mature themes, not necessarily like sexual or whatever, just like a mature like themes that kind of go beyond like teen, preteen audience. So that's something to consider. So I think I might just try to write that, and I might consider it more so for like a traditional like publication like deal with it still connecting to the old series but still being like its own thing, so that if people were to just pick up the spin-off, it is its own standalone novel, if that makes sense. So that's kind of nice also, because depending on whenever I have the chance to write it or work on it, which hopefully I would think that within, and I'm being very honest, I know you don't want to hear that it would probably take like a year or something, but like within like the year maybe I would have like a pretty shitty draft of it, just because school is busy and whatnot. It's only getting busier. So yeah, that's my plan so far with that. But yeah, any other questions before I go back to my list of questions? Also, let me know if you like the live stream kind of format, because I can do like another one whenever, honestly, because I know it's only been like it's been like almost a week since the whole book has been finished. So I know that there's still questions and concerns that you have. So yeah. All right. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else. Let me see if there's anything else. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, so all right, so I was going to end it. So yeah, so I don't know if I completely answered the question of how I was going to end the series. So that was kind of like the biggest thing, was just like with Olive maybe being a long lost like sibling, but that other than that, a lot of the things just kind of came to me over time. So the whole like thing with Gino and his family was sort of like a last minute thing that I kind of thought about, like maybe like a year ago. Ironically, like my roommate had mentioned something about like something happening on like a TV show or some like in real life, or like someone found out that like their parent was like their brother. And I know it's like their brother was like their their biological like parent or something. And there's like a Disney show where that's like the plot too. Didn't copy it. I thought of it first. So that was kind of like also a last minute thing. But I'm trying to think if there's like anything definitively like, because I really feel like there might have been like a reveal in the sense like maybe during like graduation. So maybe another thing would have been like maybe she like would have ultimately like graduated like early, because she could have, because she has credits or whatever that I think Wallace alluded to. So then like at graduation she just like is like, oh, this is a huge like social experiment with Cowdrey, and then so that's like maybe I would say probably could have been like an ending option, like her being like, okay, jig is up. Um, at graduation, I'm gonna do a speech and say that I did this for like a social reason, social experiment reason. Because there's like this, I think also this Lifetime movie slash book where it's like this character who like pretends to be like pregnant or something, and then in high school, and then she just to kind of see how people like react to her, and then she at the end is like, hey, by the way, I'm not, but it's shitty how you treated me and blah blah blah, and we should treat people better. So that was maybe the inspiration behind that. So I don't know, I think I like how it ended. It's kind of bittersweet, and that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of like my flavor. That's why I like things. I don't like things too happy. Not that I'm against happy endings. I do feel like sometimes in TV or in media or in other books, they deliberately have this unhappy, the main character dies, something bad happens just because we we want it to have more shock value, or we have some just random twist at the end, again for shock value, which I like. I think for me, I'm always going to want to have like a twist or want to have like some kind of like thing. But I think how it works or what it feels like earned is when there's a build up to it. And that's like, I think there's like all these videos on YouTube about like how to properly do a plot twist that I was too lazy to watch. But like that's kind of how my impression of it is that you can't just have a random twist, but you have to like allude to it. It has to make sense. You know what I mean? But again, like these things weren't like planned per se. Like I didn't plan for like Edsel to be Gino's father. I didn't plan for that. It just kind of like also, you know, as also when you're writing, you know, trying to really delve deep and think, okay, well, how can I use my characters in the most interesting way possible? What are some, you know, interesting situations can I put them in? Um, you know what I mean? Trying to be deliberate, but also, you know, spontaneous and blah blah blah. So, yeah. Okay, let me see for my list of questions on my trusty phone if there's anything else that I have not covered yet. It's my favorite characters. Um, Will Gino and Maren get together? Someone asked me about the song choice at the end, like the finale. Let me write something else. Any more questions? The song that used in the finale, uh, "Youth" by Daughter. Like, why did I decide to use that song for like the finale chapter? Oops, sorry. Sorry. Why did I decide to use that for the? I'm just gonna put the link in the description there. And I liked it just because it kind of like mostly for the vibe. It has a very like bittersweet kind of vibe. And some of the lyrics in it are very representative of the characters and the journey that they're on. So I liked this particular line that I like about it. You know, let me find it real quick. I'm just looking at the lyric list on Gmail on Google. Like setting fires to our insides for fun to distract our hearts from ever missing them, but I'm forever missing him. So it's just kind of like, you know, Gino leaves. That's kind of like whatever. There's also this like theme of like fire and like breathing, which kind of makes me think of like the fire that kind of caused everything in book one. And like this like sort of this sense of like there's this regret, but also like looking towards the future theme with the song, which I think is, you know, representative of the ending of a novel. So like again, like we're the reckless, we're the wild youth, chasing visions of our futures. One day we'll reveal the truth. So it's kind of that one day that one will die before he gets there. It's just very like kind of you can get little like subtle like things that connect to the novel. Also, Daughter, they also sing the in like the book two, like the chapter that when they're like the New Year's Eve or New Year's Day chapter or whatever, home, when they're at his like house in when they're at Gino's house in where does he live? In not Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, it's kind of like they're just a band I like, and I feel like their music kind of vibes well with the theme of the series and everything. So yeah. Alrighty. I think I have maybe one more question. But is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about? Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's it for me. Like I talked a little bit about like the plan so far. So the plan is just to have like a spin-off, but again, like not like a. I really don't like spin-offs when it's like some character you don't care about and then the main character. It's like no, it will still be, you know, Maren and Gino, maybe more of like equal like still in third person, but like more like equal scene time, if that makes sense. So like I think obviously with this series we tend to stay more in like Mirren's perspective because it is more of her story. But I think for this we would kind of switch, still stay in third person, but then switch sometimes having it with the Gino's perspective, his flashbacks of the past, her flashbacks of the past, kind of whatever, switching a little bit. So I think that would be interesting in that respect. Um, but if you think you prefer just to kind of know what she's doing and just kind of keep it kind of exactly how it was before. But I do think it would just be limited in their perspective. Like I know for this series, it was more so like mostly in Mirren's perspective, and then sometimes Chino, then sometimes Parker, then sometimes whatever. But for this one, it would just be max the two of them. We would probably never go into like what Wallace is doing or whatever. Like he would be in it, obviously, but it wouldn't really be it'd be more limited in that respect. Just and then that's also to kind of keep it like shorter. So I think that's what kind of made the series as long as it is, because it's in high school and because it's like third person, like overarching. We go through different perspectives or whatever. It just takes a while to kind of get through it all. Hence why the third book was so long. Hence why you have to like tie up all these loose ends. So yeah. So yeah, but oops, sorry. Anyways, so that's all I have to say for that. I'll definitely keep you guys posted as I work on that. If I work on any new things, I know there's like another series that I'm also working on, not related to the Class Reject or whatever. And I'll definitely try to keep you guys posted with that. But as always, please, if you like my content, please, subscribe. Please, just keep posted. And yeah, everything should be great. Let me see. Hold on. I think I have one more thing. I'm trying to see if there's anything else to talk about. Nope. And that's it for me. I've blabbed on long enough. Anyways, thank you so much for coming in for this live stream. This was fun. And hopefully we can do some more in the future. Okay. Bye.